Today's episode of Hobby Talk is where my love for sports collecting begins. The Kansas City Chiefs. So, I have been a Chiefs fan my entire life, and this episode is straight passion for me. This episode is honestly where it all begins. I've been going to Chiefs games since I was a kid. I've been through the thick and thin, the awful seasons, and I want to share a few Chiefs items with you today. So, first off, we have a signed Tony Gonzalez helmet. So, Tony G, one of the greatest tight ends of all time. This guy was so much fun to watch. Dunk the ball in the uprights whenever he'd score a touchdown. He had this whole one-hand bobble, two-hand catch. I remember I used to play catch with my dad, and I tried to emulate that. I do the one-hand bobble, two-hand catch. He was awesome. He was crazy reliable. He had over 15,000 yards in his career. He only missed 2 games in 17 years. Think about that. And as a tight end, and a durable one. He was a guy that could pass block, run block, catch the ball, yards after catch. I mean, the guy was a stud. So, signed Tony Gonzalez helmet. Simple, but super cool. Signed helmets to me are an awesome way to collect. If you enjoy this type of thing, they fill up shelves well. You can get into it a couple different ways. They have signed helmets that are an authentic helmet, and they're the more expensive, kind of cooler way if you're into that. I have a couple of those. I have like a Randy Moss one that's really cool, and it's an authentic helmet. This one is a replica, so it has this little guard inside, and it's just a cheap helmet. But you can pick up signed helmets for a couple $100 or less, and they're just really cool. So there was actually a sports bar and grill in Kansas City, kind of a sports museum bar and grill that I used to go to as a kid, and they would hang helmets from the ceiling, and the whole ceiling was decked out in helmets hanging from it. College helmets, high school, pro. It was super cool. So signed Tony G helmet. Pretty basic but cool. So the next item is a newsstand edition Sports Illustrated. So just real brief, I'll talk about this in the future more. I'll dive into it. But Sports Illustrated, a lot of people collect Sports Illustrated. A lot of people have them. They used to, you'd get a subscription and they'd come in and you stick them in a tote in your basement, you just keep them in your attic or whatever. Well, newsstand editions are the ones without the labels. And so some people can remove the labels from subscription. If you send them in to get graded, CGC, who does the grading, will know. But newsstand editions are very rare. And think about why. People traveling, you'd stop and get in a subway at a newsstand and grab a Sports Illustrated and walk to wherever you're going or hop on a plane, and then you toss it. You never went back to your house with it. So very rarely. So they are much harder to find than subscription edition. So the one I have today is from November 24th, 1969. The Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs paint New York red. So I love this thing. Talk about scarcity just briefly. There are only 6 of these, and only one graded higher than the 9.0 here. So very scarce, hard to find. 3 years earlier, the Chiefs had lost the Super Bowl to the Green Bay Packers, Super Bowl I. They finally avenged that, and they beat the Vikings in Super Bowl IV in this 1969 season. So in this season, Lynn Dawson, he missed 6 games due to an injury, and the Chiefs defense carried them. When they beat the Minnesota Vikings in the Super Bowl, they won 23-7. They held them to 7 points. It's crazy. So tough team. If you're a Chiefs fan and you've been to Arrowhead, which is the greatest stadium in the world, there's the Ring of Honor where all the players, the legends for the Chiefs, are around this ring in the stadium. And a lot of those people played on this team. You have like Bobby Bell, Buck Buchanan, Willie Lanier, Emmett Thomas, Otis Taylor, Lynn Dawson, of course, Hank Stram, who led the Chiefs that year as a coach. And so just a legendary team. I love how it shows Lynn Dawson in his choir setup. So obviously all the teams huddle now and everybody huddles. Lynn Dawson did this whole choir thing where they would all line up and he would call the plays.
This is how Lynn Dawson huddled up with his team.
Just a super cool image, but a crazy year. And so this published on November 24th, 1969. This was coming off of a win where they went into New York and they beat Broadway Joe Namath and the Jets 34-16. In that game, Otis Taylor, at receiver, had 3 touchdowns. I found this when I moved into our house now. I have an Otis Taylor signed photo that I remember getting with my dad at an autograph signing, and I remember he signed it so slow and was so ornate with it. It was just really neat. Otis Taylor died this year, March of 2023, and Chiefs legend, amazing wide receiver, and so in that game he had 3 touchdowns, so that's pretty awesome. The path to the Super Bowl this year, so they obviously were coming off of that win to the Jets. They were finishing up the season, and then they got into the playoffs. In the playoffs, they ended up playing the Raiders and then the Jets, and then they beat the Vikings in the Super Bowl. And I said the defense carried them. Well, when they beat the Raiders, January 4th, 1970. They beat the Raiders 17-7. Okay, so held them to 7 points. And the Raiders were a big favorite, and they were notoriously had their bags packed, ready to go to the Super Bowl, which I'm glad we beat them, obviously, but as a Chiefs fan, I hate the Raiders, so I think it's that much sweeter. And then after we beat the Raiders, we went, and that was in the AFL Championship. Before that, we had beat Joe Namath and the Jets 13-6, so held them to 6 points. Then we go hold the Raiders to 7 points. Then we go into the Super Bowl against the Vikings and hold the Vikings to 7 points, win 23-7. So hell of a defense. And then that's the last time we won a Super Bowl for 50 years, until 2020. My dad, he always said growing up, he said, because the Chiefs had some rough years, which I'll talk about in a minute, but my dad said growing up, he said, last time the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, I was in diapers, and I was afraid the next time they win one, I'll be in diapers, which thank God that's not the case, because Patrick Mahomes took care of us. So anyways, I think that's a really cool Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrateds are an amazing collector, amazing thing to collect. You'll hear me talk about them a ton. I'm going to dive into Sports Illustrateds. That being said, the other item I have here is something very near and dear to me that, again, I found whenever I was moving, and it's my custom Austin Evans Chiefs jersey. This thing is so cool. Number 82. I had to have gotten this thing around 2002, 2003 when I was 9 or 10 years old. I know I wanted 82 because I loved Derek Alexander, one of our wide receivers. Remember our wide receivers during the early 2000s, Johnny Morton, Eddie Kinnison, and Derek Alexander. And if you're a Chiefs fan, you know those names. A little later, we had Dante Hall, obviously. But, this thing is so cool. Check this out. On the front, just says Chiefs, no number on the front. Doesn't look like an authentic jersey at all. I loved it when I got it. I remember in the years following, I wanted so badly to get a stitched jersey, and stitched jerseys like the pros have were so expensive, and it was always screen printed. So anyways, this thing will be with me forever. My son's name starts with an A, so maybe he'll have it and want to wear it, but super cool. Just like I said, this is an episode of passion. I've been a Chiefs fan since I was a kid, and we had rough years. I mean, gosh, we had years where we were 2-14. We had years where we were 4-12. All my years growing up, we had a million starting quarterbacks. You know, Patrick Mahomes when we drafted him, thank God. But you know, Matt Castle, Damon Heward, Tyler Thigpen, Brody Croyle, Tyler Palco, Brady Quinn, Bubby Brister, Elvis Gerbach. The list goes on. I mean, it's not as bad as like the Browns have had it, but it was rough. And even the good years we had, like 2003 when we were 13-3, which I can name our whole offensive line. I can name our whole offense from that year because it was just legendary. And then we had the famous no punt game against the Colts, lost in the playoffs. And I went outside and I kicked a flower pot. I was just stupid being a kid, but sports, man. Sports are awesome. And I love the Chiefs. I love where we're at now. I'm going to soak it up and live in it as much as I can. Since 2019, we're the winningest sports franchise in all of sports since 2019. So this is a dynasty, baby. I mean, we had 2020, we won the Super Bowl. 2023, we won the Super Bowl. 2021, we were there but lost. And I'm hoping we get back. So anyways, if you're a Chiefs fan, I hope you really enjoyed this. If you're just into sports and memorabilia, I hope you still did. Last thing, this here behind me at my desk is a streamer from the 2022 divisional game against the Bills when we had the 13-second comeback and ended up winning 42-36, where we went on to go to the next round and ultimately got defeated. But what a game. One of the greatest sports games I've ever been to. So that's all I got. Let's go Kansas City Chiefs.